Thank you for joining me for this special episode of Double Talks. While my book was still in the early editing stages, I let my dear friend and podcast co host Tim Rymel read it. We talked about it on several occasions, and he expressed an interest. We share a similar background in conservative Christianity, and we were both involved in ex gay leadership, so of course I welcomed his insights. After he'd finished, he said he wanted to interview me with some of his questions. Well, we talk about the book, my writing, the subject matter of the story, and that now infamous sex scene, which one person who received an advance review copy called pornographic. Well, I assure you it's not pornographic, but Tim and I do talk about it. I want you to know there are some issues with the video. On my end, Tim, of course, looks handsome, and my sound quality is not great, but I still wanted you to see it. I loved Tim, and I was so grateful that he took the time to do this. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
This is Tim Rymel, the co-host of the Recovering from Religion program, and I'm here to interview the other co-host of Recovering from Religion, Bill Prickett, on his new book, A Double-Minded Man. And I had the privilege of reading this book before it went out to the general public, and I just want to talk about what was in it. So, Bill,
Yes.
Explain this book in about a minute.
Okay. Let me just say how strange it is being interviewed by you, since we're so used to interviewing other people. In a minute, yeah. I hear your voice, and I'm thinking somebody else ought to be answering your question, and I'm just usually listening. I think this book is very simply just one person seeking to live honestly, to live with integrity and transparency. It happens to be set in a Southern culture, in a very conservative church, and my main character Nate struggles with the things that he's always been taught in his life, but then inside him there are all these feelings, these attractions that he's never been able to admit, and so he's seeking to reconcile those two. And so I think it's universal in anybody that seeks to be honest with who they are.
This is your fourth book.
Yeah.
Can you explain how this book is different from your last books?
Different in that it is it's very personal because of the subject matter. There is a very personal element. It's drawn from some of my own experiences. I don't want to say it's autobiographical because people think, oh, did this happen to you? And that's not necessarily the case, but it's different in the sense that some of these things are so very real to what I experienced and what I lived when I was going through some of this, being involved in a very conservative church and seeking to come to terms with who I was.
And that begs the question: why now? It's somewhat autobiographical, so why now? Why this book?
I don't know if I can say the reason for now. For years, people have talked to me and it, said you ought to write an autobiography. You ought to write your own story, because I've told it for years, but I've never been interested in writing a nonfiction story of my own life. I'm way too introspective for that, and I think it would end up being so morbid and dark. So I said, well, maybe I could tell some of this through the eyes of a fictional character. And so the idea came to me, and I created my main character, Nathaniel, and he goes through some of the things that I went through in the same time period that I was going through it in my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama. So that part is autobiographical. But I think that conversion therapy is very pertinent for right now. We have an entire political party that made their platform supporting conversion therapy. We have a vice president that has come out in support of it. On the other side, we have cities and states and who are seeking to ban conversion therapy for minors. The country of France is considering banning it. So it's a very pertinent topic right now, but I didn't know all that when I started. It just kind of is a synchronicity that it worked out that way.
And one of the scenes in there that we talked about after I read your book, in fact, I think I sent you a text, was the sex scene where it it took me by surprise, but it wasn't. I wouldn't say the sex scene was necessarily graphic. It certainly is in detail about what's happening, but the emotions that it evoked in me reading that story, as somebody who's also gone through conversion therapy, I could relate to the struggle between I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I doing this? I need to get my life right with God. So there was that duality, right? That cognitive dissonance that was going on between the character, and between the character singular,
Yes.
with the double mind. What were you trying to convey in that particular scene?
Well, when we meet Nate, he's coming. His wife has died. He's going through his grieving process, and then we learn when Nate meets Trey, all of a sudden it brings up these feelings, and so now we learn that Nate has this secret, these desires that he's been able to kind of keep pressed down all of his life. He's been able to uh, uh, ignore them or sublimate them. He was happily married, and now his wife is gone, and he meets Trey, and all of a sudden it all comes back. And he resists it. He tries to avoid it, but eventually the inevitable happens. And the scene between Nate and Trey, I wanted it to be significant for Nate. I didn't want it to be some one night stand where he's, in a bathroom somewhere. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for his first experience, I wanted him to have something significant. But I also wanted to show, as you mentioned, the cognitive dissonance going on inside him, the conflict of, I shouldn't even be feeling this for Trey. I shouldn't be doing this. Why do I want this? And so all of that is going on inside his mind as they are going through uh, uh, preparing for and engaging in sex. And then I wanted it to also kind of be awkward and funny because he has no idea what he's doing. He is so sheltered. He was raised by a fundamentalist family. His father was a fundamentalist preacher. He went to a conservative college. He's never said, he doesn't use profanity. And so even all the terms that would be needed to put this there, it's foreign to it. So there's a comedy aspect to it. I just think it's an awkwardness that amused me when I was writing it. I don't like writing graphic. I don't like, definitely not pornographic. And so I wanted it to be hopefully a balance between something that's very intimate, very emotional, but also kind of awkward.
Well, I think even if somebody didn't struggle with the issue of homosexuality in the church or go through conversion therapy, what was relatable to me really was the duality, was the I shouldn't, but I am, or I feel this and it's not right, and it's the cognitive dissonance, and I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know what to do with this. Yeah. So I think you did a fantastic job with this book. I'm really excited for you that this book is coming out. Let people know where they can get it.
It will be out on October the 4th, and pre-orders should start very, very soon. And if you want the information, you can go to my website, billprickett.com. In fact, we have released the first 2 chapters, and they're available on my website. You can click and read the first 2 chapters and decide if you want to know more about Nate and Trey and all the people that populate this world. But I think people enjoy it, whether they ever lived in the South, whether they grew up in the church, whether they're gay. I think it's a universal story of trying to live our truth in a world that wants to tell us who we are.
Right. Definitely. Well, as always, pleasure talking with you, pleasure interviewing you, and I will see you
so much.
Here, there, or on the air with Recovering from Religion.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Bill.